Previously on Maplestory the novel, Sacred Tears.
During my search, I met Ephenia and decided to research the darkness more closely instead.
They are the ones. They are the reason.
What was that?
The more I cut, the faster it spreads.
Why did he do that?
And now the continuation of Chapter 9, Part 2. As the weight of her feelings began to overwhelm her, the darkness suddenly vanished. Dane pulled the bottle from her hand and gripped her to his chest, holding the bottle away. The stillness slowly calmed her as Dane's heart rhythm gradually brought her back to reality.
Are you alright, Ephenia?
Dane asked with concern.
What was that?
She asked with a shaky breath, as if she had been on the verge of tears. Something in the back of her mind felt like a hazy memory of saying those exact words, but it soon slipped away.
What you're experiencing was the gathered emotion of someone who may have been abused or assaulted. I haven't been able to pinpoint what exactly happened.
Ephenia wanted to reach for Dane's shirt and grip it as hard as she could to ground herself, but there was still a lingering fear.
I felt like I should have done something different. If only I had—
Ephenia, those are not your emotions. Breathe and listen to what I'm saying. You have nothing to fear from me. I have not and will not assault you, ever. Think back to what you know of me. Don't focus on the present right now. Focus on the past.
It was a struggle, but Dane's words kept her focused enough to think back on when she first met Dane, what it was that drew her to him, and how she had fallen in love with him. A few moments later, her fears and shame were gone.
How is darkness able to do this? It's contained but fled my mind so easily. Yet you seem unaffected.
Dane sighed with relief, putting the bottle away.
This is a powerful pain, left uncomforted, tucked away within the human spirit where it festered. These are all secret pains of people who died or were consumed by it.
Dane explained, motioning to the other bottles within the room with labels like abuse, abandonment, rejection, and loss.
Without the knowledge of what it is, or how to make sure it doesn't affect you, it will affect your mind very easily. All darkness is like this. With what I know of magic, it is barely enough to maintain my control, and not become lost to its thrall, even in this small amount.
Ephenia leaned against his back and pulled her arms around him, noting that the room felt heavier than she first realized.
Then why aren't the people of the world affected more? The power contained within this darkness should send everyone to a spiral of depression and fear.
Ephenia asked.
Perhaps direct contact with darkness, like what you experienced, as opposed to indirect exposure out in the world, is what makes it so much more dangerous.
Dane theorized. Ephenia put her hand on his shoulder, sliding down his arm and lacing her fingers with his.
Come. A walk would give you a chance to clear your mind away from all this foul pain,
she suggested, turning him around and leading him out the door. Immediately, Dane appeared to brighten, despite the constant night-like air of the forest. Reaching back inside the door, he grabbed his old staff, leading Ephenia through the forest. They admired the plants that grew in the comforting glow of the guide crystals that he and the others had made to light their way.
It's them again,
grumbled the blue-eyed being.
They always come out after a couple weeks. Maybe they're ready for another trick.
The green-eyed being answered, floating up next to the blue-eyed being.
He doesn't have that thing that makes us scared. So maybe we should be able to get him good.
The blue-eyed being giggled.
Yeah, we should be able to try that snake trick again. It'll be funny to watch him dance and flail in terror.
The green-eyed being exclaimed. The two of them giggled and snorted as they searched for a dangerous snake. They managed to slip away from Guaru and his constant scornful gaze, learning a thing or two about what snakes were hazardous to humans. Once they had found their snake, the blue-eyed being picked it up, giggling as it tried to bite, only to catch a mouthful of wispy, smoke-like aura. The humans were hard to find again, despite the man having long white hair and the woman having those brightly colored wings. Eventually, the beings found them sitting on a rock, just talking and pressing their faces together over and over again. The blue-eyed being watched for a while with envious apprehension, but the green-eyed being scoffed and rolled its eyes.
Look, remember what we're trying to do here.
The green-eyed being scolded with a hissing whisper. The blue-eyed being squinted as if smiling and nodded. The beings waited for just the right opportunity when both the humans stood.
It's now or never. Do it!
The green-eyed being seethed. The blue-eyed being was ready to toss the snake, but stopped when the man turned to them. He stared at them for a long while before speaking, probably to make sure the woman didn't hear.
It's you. I know you're there. Come out into the light. Tell me, Ephenia, how human are you right now? I know this body is an avatar to walk amongst us humans, but how far does that extend?
Dane asked, sitting down on an outcropping of rock. Ephenia sat down beside him and thought for a minute.
What is it you are asking? Are you asking if this body can bear children?
I suppose to some degree I am. But what I am more curious to know is whether your extended stays within this body affects you as a goddess. Is harm coming to you as you are? Are you irreversibly changing?
Dane asked. Ephenia thought as she looked over the nighttime landscape before leaning against him.
There are many ways in which you have changed me, Dane. I may be a goddess, but during my stays here, I have been provided a glimpse of how precious, how disproportionately short your beautifully tragic lives are. Sometimes, I curse my existence to know that I will outlive you, and all humans alive today many eons over.
She sighed, leaning over and pressing her lips to Dane's with all the passion she felt deep within her being.
But then I remember all the time we have shared, and how you have shown me that while your lives may be short, they are the most meaningful. If I could, I would abandon my post as a goddess to live out my days with you.
Again she kissed him with slow but deliberate movements. Dane sighed, pressing his forehead to hers.
I do not think I would even ask such a thing of you. The world relies on your existence, and it would pain me to know that the world you grew to love with me will be deprived of you. If and when the day comes that I do die, and it will, I will still be part of it. I will live on in here.
Dane pointed to her chest as Ephenia reached for his hand, placing it over her heart. It was a comfort to feel the warmth of his palm. She knew she could travel through the memory hall to relive this exact moment anytime she wished. Sadly, she would never feel the memory ever again. She would never feel the warmth of his hand, the strength, the size of his touch this way ever again.
Promise me this, Dane. You will find a way to defeat the darkness, and you will never be taken by its thrall.
Ephenia begged as Dane cradled her jaw before pressing his lips to hers with a long, firm kiss.
I promise,
he whispered, leaning his forehead against hers for some time before they both stood.
I suppose we should be getting back. It's been a couple hours,
Ephenia suggested.
I will join you shortly. I have a few thoughts I wish to explore before returning.
He smiled as she left, their hands lingering on one another for some time before Ephenia spread her wings and fluttered back to the cottage. Dane, meanwhile, turned his attention to the bramble behind the rock and stared hard at it. When he was sure Ephenia was far enough away, he spoke firmly.
It's you. I know you're there. Come out into the light.
Dane commanded as the blue and green-eyed beings came out into the light of the crystals. Before Dane could say anything more, the blue-eyed being tossed the snake at Dane. Instead of getting the panicked reaction the two beings were hoping for, Dane simply watched the snake land at his feet. The snake didn't do much for a moment. Instead, it flicked its tongue a few times as though righting itself. Dane reached down, picking up the snake and staring it in the eye for a long while before he casually set it down. The beings were in dumbfounded awe as the snake slithered back into the forest.
Aw, come on! That was supposed to surprise you and make you dance!
The blue-eyed being exclaimed. Dane chuckled softly.
You two are quite mischievous, aren't you? You both tried to pull this trick a long time ago.
The blue-eyed being narrowed its eyes as the green-eyed being spoke up.
Yeah, and after that we were gonna jump out of the bushes and scare you off. That would have been hysterical.
The green-eyed being laughed in unison with the blue-eyed being as they recounted their plans. Dane chuckled again as he listened to them speak.
Yes, well, something like that requires that I be at least a bit afraid of you.
The beings raised what appeared to be an eyebrow and looked at one another, perplexed.
Hey, how come you aren't afraid of us? We've jumped out at other people before, and they scream and they yell as loud as they can while running away. But you aren't even shaking.
The blue-eyed being scoffed, looking Dane up and down. Dane thought back to what Nana Huatzin told him about who he was and why he was so attuned to the world's imbalance.
Perhaps it is because I am not your usual human. Normal humans can't sense things as I do. The other humans that come here can also sense things that no ordinary human can.
Dane answered with a grin, kneeling to better see the beings before him.
Tell me, what are you? You aren't like the other creatures that are formed of darkness.
Dane said. The beings looked at each other, unsure how to answer.
We are...
The green-eyed being began, stopped when the blue-eyed being nudged the other.
What?
When your fires all die out, all you know just turns to ash, and your life goes slipping, spinning into doubt. Sunshine trapped inside your heart, cold and lost and in the dark. Looking back on all this, nobody was there. Nothing left to lose. Gotta find the you that's hidden deep